It was only in the moment before my death that I realized Gu Lin had always resented me. He hated me for reporting him back then, ruining his elopement with Lan Kuo. It was only in the moment before my death that I realized Gu Lin had always resented me. He hated me for reporting him back then, ruining his elopement with Lan Kuo. Cece, if it weren't for your scheming back then, Kuo would have been my wife long ago, and she wouldn't have had to suffer so much all these years, Gu Lin said, holding a coy Lan Kuo in his arms, looking down at me from above. I clutched my stomach, crawling on my hands and knees to Gu Lin's feet, the blood staining the ground red. Ah Lin, save me. I desperately grabbed Gu Lin's pant leg, but he kicked me away in disgust. Now Kuo is back. Zhang Shi, all the happiness you've enjoyed over the years should be returned to Kuo. With that, Gu Lin wrapped his arm around Lan Kuo and turned to leave. No, please. I beg you. Save me. No. Save our child. I used my last ounce of strength to shout at Gu Lin, watching their retreating figures, feeling the life fading away inside me. I finally closed my eyes helplessly. Cece, Auntie won't make it. Please help Auntie. Looking at Auntie Gu, who was holding me in her arms, I felt a bit dazed for a moment. Wasn't I already dead? I touched my flat belly, feeling no trace of another life within. I pushed Aunt Gu aside and rushed to the bathroom. Looking at the youthful face in the mirror, I couldn't help but burst into tears. I have been reborn. Reborn on the day I stopped Gu Lin from eloping. In my past life, it was because I found Gu Lin that he held a grudge against me for the rest of his life. He believed that I was the reason he missed the train to elope with Lan Kuo. Since heaven has given me another chance, this time I will not interfere in any of his affairs. Gu Lin, since you love Lan Kuo so much, I wish you and her to be locked together forever. I calmed my emotions and went to the living room, pretending nothing had happened. Fortunately, nothing has happened yet, and I still have a chance to start over. As soon as she saw me come out, Aunt Gu immediately started wailing again. Oh, why is my fate so bitter? I only have this one son. How can I live without him? Cece, Auntie loves you the most. I've always treated you like my own daughter. You have to help Auntie. Okay. I couldn't help but sneer inwardly. Biological daughter. More like a scapegoat. Father Gu died in the line of duty, and Gu Lin was raised single-handedly by Aunt Gu. Gu Lin was her everything. To avoid damaging my relationship with Gu Lin, I was the one who did anything that might upset him. I played the role of the stern enforcer, while Aunt Gu was the kind-hearted peacemaker. Take this time. For example, she was the one who begged me to find Gu Lin. Yet in the end, she pretended to know nothing, making it seem like I acted entirely on my own. In my past life, I loved Gu Lin deeply and only saw Aunt Gu's true face just before I died. In this life, I feel nothing but hatred for Gu Lin, so why would I ever do as she wishes? I spoke up. Aunt Gu, since you're so worried, why don't we call the police? Call the police, Aunt Gu exclaimed. No. We can't call the police. Cece, how could you? She suddenly stopped as if something had occurred to her, then glanced furtively at my parents and said in a tearful voice, we can't call the police. If this blows up and everyone finds out, how will the teachers and classmates at school look at our Gu Lin in the future? What will he do then? I said seriously. Aunt Gu, you can't do this. Since you said you can't find Gu Lin, then calling the police is the best choice. What if he and Lan Kuo have encountered something bad, like being robbed or kidnapped? I stopped mid-sentence, looking at Aunt Gu with a terrified expression. Aunt Gu, no. We have to call the police. Maybe something has happened to them by now. They got robbed, resisted to the death, and ended up lying dead in the wilderness. Puffed. 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 Who's lying dead in the wilderness? Gu Lin can't be in trouble. He just. Aunt Gu stopped herself mid-sentence. I sneered coldly. I was truly blinded by love in my past life. Given how much Aunt Gu dotes on Gu Lin, how could she possibly not know where he was at that moment? She just wanted to trick me into revealing Gu Lin's location, so she could go find him and stop him from eloping with Lan Kuo. That way, when Gu Lin later brought up this matter, she could wash her hands of it and continue being a loving mother and son with him. In my past life, she certainly succeeded. In my past life, when I heard that Gu Lin had eloped with Lan Kua and disappeared, I immediately panicked. At that time, I was deeply in love with Gu Lin. And with Aunt Gu adding fuel to the fire with her tearful complaints, I couldn't wait to find Gu Lin and bring him back. As for now, watching Aunt Gu's performance, I feel nothing at all. No matter how much she cries and pleads, my only response is still to call the police. Seeing that this trick wasn't working on me as it usually did, Aunt Gu wiped away her tears and took my hand. Cece, I'll be honest with you in my heart. You are my only daughter-in-law. You and Gu Lin grew up together, and I know you like him. Aunt Gu, what exactly are you trying to say? Aren't we talking about finding Gu Lin right now? I pulled my hand away from hers. What Auntie wants to say is just this. You and Gu Lin are in the same class, and you interact with him the most on a daily basis. You must know where Gu Lin is now. Auntie knows you like Gu Lin, for his own good. You have to tell me where he is. I don't know, I replied without hesitation. Impossible. You must know. Even if Gu Lin didn't tell you directly, he would have let slip some clues in his daily behavior. Think carefully. Cece, Auntie, I really don't know, I said, looking troubled. Ever since Lan Kua transferred here and Gu Lin got together with her, we've been fighting a lot. Actually, we broke up a long time ago, but I didn't say anything because I was afraid you'd worry. I continued, sounding a bit aggrieved. Gu Lin and I haven't spoken in a long time, so I really don't know where he went. What I said was half true and half false. Ever since Gu Lin got together with Lan Kua, we really have been fighting constantly. Because I wouldn't let him skip school, wouldn't let him hang out with Lan Kua at bars, and made sure he did his homework and studied. He hated my discipline, so we were always arguing, but we never stopped talking, because I was Gu Lin's devoted follower, no matter how badly Gu Lin scolded me the day before. The next day I would still follow him around like a lapdog. In my past life, it was also under Aunt Gu's guidance that I remembered Gu Lin had recently been going to a bar in the east of the city with Lan Kua, and I later found him at a nearby hotel. As for this lifetime, I will never go looking for Gu Lin. No matter what tricks Aunt Gu pulls, I won't fall for them again. As I spoke, I secretly pinched my thigh hard to squeeze out a few tears. Seeing me cry, Dad spoke with some displeasure. Gu Lin's mother, I think our Cece really doesn't know. Don't keep pushing her. Why don't you go home and look for clues? If that doesn't work, we'll go with you to report it to the police. Dad opened the door, signaling her to leave. Aunt Gu wanted to say something more, but was stopped by my mother, so she had no choice but to leave my house helplessly. Watching Aunt Gu's receding figure, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. This time, it wasn't me who hindered Gu Lin's elopement. He no longer had any reason to hurt me. Dad wiped away my tears and said, Silly girl, what are you crying for? I've long felt that Gu Lin wasn't a good kid. Before, you were always chasing after him, so I couldn't say much. Now that you two have fallen out, it's just as well. That's right. That's right. Mom chimed in from the side. That's right about what? Dad couldn't help but roll his eyes. You're always a Monday morning quarterback. Who was it that kept whispering in my ear about wanting Gu Lin to be our son-in-law someday? Well, I just thought since Gu Lin and Cece grew up together, we know him inside and out. He's good-looking, does well in school, and Cece likes him. So forget it. Forget it. Who would have thought the kid would go and elope like this? In my past life, after I brought Gu Lin back, my father told me that Gu Lin was not a good person, and that if I continued down this path, I would surely get hurt. But at that time, I was stubborn and refused to see the truth. I firmly believed that I could change Gu Lin and get what I wanted. In the end, I did marry Gu Lin. But I never expected that the person lying beside me would despise me to such an extent. I can't bear to imagine how heartbroken my parents, who loved me so much in my past life, Must have been when they learned of my death. I pulled myself together and said firmly to my parents, "Mom, Dad, don't worry. I don't like Gulin anymore. I was foolish before, putting all my focus on him, but I won't do that again. In my past life, I devoted all my attention to Gulin, causing my once decent grades to plummet. My lack of education became a stain on my record. And Gulin always looked down on me because of it. In this life, I will study hard, get into the university of my dreams, stay far away from Gulin, and start a new life." As I expected, Aunt Gu knew where Gulin was, seeing that I didn't help her this time. She eventually went to find him on her own. However, unexpectedly, Aunt Gu was a step too late. Gulin had already checked out and left. He and Lan Kuer had actually succeeded in eloping. Considering that Aunt Gu went there even earlier than when I found Gulin in my past life, how could he have left ahead of time? Moreover, in my past life, I had investigated and found that Lan Kuer would never elope with Gulin. She was only with him now to toy with his feelings. From the very first day she transferred to this school, Lan Kuer despised Gulin's cold and aloof demeanor as a top student. She only wanted to pull Gulin off his pedestal and toy with him in the palm of her hand. In my past life, even if I hadn't taken Gulin away from the hotel, Lan Kuer wouldn't have shown up at the train station. I never expected that in this life. The two of them would actually succeed in eloping. Could it be the butterfly effect caused by my rebirth? However, none of this has anything to do with me. I have already started a new life, and I don't want to have anything to do with his matters. I submitted a request to the school to transfer from the science class to the humanities class. In my previous life, in order to be with Gulin, I stubbornly chose a science track that I was neither good at nor enjoyed. Since I have been reborn, this time I will live for myself. A week later, Gulin returned with Lan Kuer. I thought we had no more connections, but unexpectedly, Lan Kuer stopped me in the restaurant. She clung to Gulin's arm, appearing before me with the air of a victor. I looked at Lan Kuer before Mesh was even more beautiful and radiant than in her past life. However, there was a slight lack of student-like innocence in her demeanor, replaced by a hint of worldly weariness. Was she like this in her past life too? I couldn't help but frown, pondering silently to myself. She sent Gulin away and said to me with ill intent, "Zhang Qian, Gulin and I are already together. Aren't you shocked that I didn't bring Gulin back from the hotel?" I was shocked by her words, but I pretended to look confused and asked, "Hotel? What hotel? What are you talking about? I don't understand." "It doesn't matter if you don't understand. You just need to know that Gulin is mine." But then again, Lan Kuer gently patted my face with her hand and said mockingly, "With a face like yours, I'm not afraid. In my past life, I could beat you. And in this life, I can still do the same." Lan Kuer leaned close to my ear and whispered softly, "You enjoyed happiness for so long in your past life. In this life, it's my turn to enjoy it." So Lan Kuer has also been reborn. No wonder Gulin left the hotel early. No wonder the two of them actually eloped. I took a deep breath and pretended to be angry. "Lan Kuer, I have no idea what you're talking about. What past life? This life. If you want to go crazy, go do it somewhere else. Don't hold me up from eating. I used to like Gulin, but now I have zero interest in him." Hearing me say this, Lan Kuer visibly breathed a sigh of relief. "TSK, TSK, TSK. I didn't even say anything. So why are you getting so worked up? Just remember that Gulin is mine." With that, Lan Kuer twisted her waist and turned to leave. Watching Lan Kuer's retreating figure, I chuckled inwardly. I wish you and Gulin a lifetime of happiness, locked together forever, never to be separated, enjoying blessings. Let's see how much fortune you have to enjoy. In the previous life, when Lan Kuer met Gulin again, he had already become a successful young entrepreneur. She only saw me standing by Gulin's side, smiling and basking in the glory, unaware of how many failures I endured with Gulin before he finally succeeded, and how much I had sacrificed for his success. Without my help, I don't believe Gu Lin can succeed in this lifetime. As for Lan Kuer's desire for a life of comfort, she can keep dreaming. The reborn Lan Kuer took Gu Lin everywhere to eat, drink, and have fun, indulging in a life of luxury and pleasure. Whenever Gu Lin wanted to study hard, Lan Kuer always told him, "Trust me, with your good grades, you'll definitely be recommended for admission." Aunt Gu was furious about this and wanted to dissuade Gu Lin, but she was afraid he would run away from home again and elope with Lan Kuer. Helpless, she could only come to my house and cry to me, thinking I would still try to dissuade Gu Lin like before. But I, mimicking her tone from the previous life, said, "The academic pressure is so heavy now. It's only right for Gu Lin to go out and relax a bit. Gu Lin is so smart. It's fine for him to take a break once in a while. Auntie, don't worry so much." In the previous life, after Gu Lin was dumped by Lan Kuer on the grounds of breaking a promise, he also went through a period of being down and out. At that time, I was the one who went everywhere looking for Gu Lin, dragging him back to study. No matter how much he insulted me or despised me, I stuck to his side like a shadow. Aunt Gu, putting on a facade of kindness, said on the side, "Cece, don't be so tense. It's normal for Gu Lin to go out and play to relieve his mood. Now, when I speak the lines she said in her past life, she gets angry instead." Aunt Gu suffered a silent loss with me and could only leave helplessly, never coming to find me again. I began to focus on my studies, making the final sprint for the college entrance exam. As for Gu Lin, without my advice to hold him back, his grades plummeted this time, and in the end, he naturally didn't secure the recommendation spot for P University. The foolish Lan Kuer thought that after her rebirth, as long as she clung tightly to Gu Lin, everything would develop just as it had in her previous life. Little did she know that everything is subject to change. The next time Gu Lin was heard from was 3 months later, when he was publicly reprimanded and given a disciplinary demerit by the school for getting into a fight off campus. The Gu Lin of now was not yet the promising young entrepreneur from his past life. He was just an ordinary high school student. He didn't have enough money to let Lan Kuer squander as she pleased. When he spent the last penny he had saved, conflicts gradually arose between him and Lan Kuer, driven by his pride. Gu Lin was unwilling to let Lan Kuer know that it was because he had no money that he didn't want to go out and have fun with her. Whenever Lan Kuer invited Gu Lin to go out and have fun, Gu Lin always refused her on the excuse of failing to secure a direct admission and falling behind in grades, and would even drag Lan Kuer into studying together. At first, Lan Kuer was willing to play along with Gu Lin in this "I love studying" game, acting like a well-behaved girl. But as time went on, she couldn't stand it anymore. Behind Gu Lin's back, relying on memories from her past life, she hooked up with a rich second-generation delinquent. The two quickly became entangled. However, there is no wall that doesn't let the wind through, and before long, Gu Lin found out about it. In order to keep Gu Lin by her side, Lan Kuer lied, claiming that the rich second-generation thug had forced her to be with him. Furious, Gu Lin went to the bar to find the rich second generation and gave him a severe beating. The rich second generation, having been beaten up for no reason, naturally couldn't swallow this insult. He not only had someone break one of Gu Lin's legs but also used his family's connections to pressure the school into expelling Gu Lin. Aunt Gu had no choice but to beg and plead, going around to find connections everywhere. In the end, she paid a large sum of money to the rich second generation, and only then was the matter settled. Even so, Gu Lin still received a major demerit, which was recorded in his file. After this incident, Lan Kuer became much more well-behaved and stopped hanging out outside. Gu Lin also got back on track and started studying. However, everything was still too late. The college entrance exam arrived quietly. After a year of relentless, sleepless study, I was admitted to my dream university, H University. Although Gu Lin started to work hard later on, it was ultimately too late. In his previous life, he was recommended to the best program at P University. In this life, His grades barely passed the cutoff. And he could only end up at a third-rate university. As for Lan Kuer, in this life, she didn't get into university at all. To celebrate my admission to H University, one of the top universities in the country, my father held a 3-day banquet in the courtyard. The Gu Lin household was shrouded in deathly silence. Lan Kuer, who had been reborn, had once confidently declared that Gu Lin would definitely be recommended to P University when Gu Lin failed to secure the recommendation. She assured Aunt Gu that Gu Lin would surely get into P University on his own merit. Gu Lin had originally given up hope on his own grades, but Lan Kuer's certainty rekindled his hope when the college entrance exam results came out. They shattered all his illusions. The summer vacation ended, and on the day I left home for H University, I saw Gu Lin at the train station. Gu Lin was wearing wrinkled clothes. His hair was messy, and his face was covered in stubble. He looked nothing like the favored son of heaven from his past life. Qian, long time no see. Yeah, congratulations on getting into H University. Back when I found out you switched to the liberal arts class, I thought you were crazy. I never expected your liberal arts grades to be so good that you actually got into H University. Seeing that I didn't say anything, Gu Lin nervously rubbed his hands together. I studied Gu Lin, recalling the situation from my previous life. Back then, Gu Lin was full of pride after being recommended for admission to P University, while I only managed to get into a second-tier college. Every time, Gu Lin would look at me with contempt and say, "Zhang Qian, you're so pathetic. Who else would want you besides me?" Now, it seems our roles have reversed, and it's Gu Lin who appears uneasy in front of me. I looked Gu Lin up and down and said, "How are your legs doing?" Gu Lin hid his right leg behind him, speaking somewhat uneasily. "It's okay, besides still hurting a bit on rainy days." "It's fine now." "That's good to hear. Which university are you going to?" I asked. Gu Lin, as if hearing some huge joke, said self-deprecatingly, "What university could I go to? I missed the cutoff. I'm planning to go south to work and see what opportunities come up." I stared at Gu Lin in shock. "Didn't you pass the line? How is this possible?" "It's all because of Lan Kuer." Gu Lin paused as if recalling something, then said, "Forget it. Let's not talk about her." A moment of silence fell between us, and we just looked at each other without a word. After being reborn, I had thought about how to take revenge on Gu Lin, to trample him and Lan Kuer under my feet. I had also fantasized about how I would humiliate Gu Lin once I became successful, but all of this vanished into thin air at this moment. I don't need to take revenge. They will bring about their own destruction. The best revenge I can have on them is to live my own life well. Cece, do you think if I hadn't eloped with Lan Kuer back then, I would be happily going to college just like you now? Cece, if I had listened to you back then, maybe. Gu Lin, life doesn't have that many what-ifs. I cut him off. My train is about to leave. I have to go. I turned and walked away, leaving Gu Lin standing there in a daze. Only later did I find out that Gu Lin missed his admission because Lan Kuer had secretly altered his application. Originally, although Gu Lin couldn't get into P University, at least he had passed the cutoff and could attend a third-rate ordinary university. However, relying on her past life experience, Lan Kuer stubbornly believed that Gu Lin would definitely go to P University, so she secretly altered Gu Lin's application. Without a doubt, Gu Lin's application was rejected. If it were just a rejection, Gu Lin could still retake the exam or go to a slightly worse university. But what was unexpected was that after learning Gu Lin couldn't get into P University, Lan Kuer used Gu Lin and Aunt Gu's ID cards to secretly take out online loans. It was only when the creditors found Gu Lin's family and threatened to take away their house that Gu Lin learned the truth. By then, Lan Kuer had already fled to who knows where. Originally, Aunt Gu had already racked up a mountain of debt to compensate the rich second generation. On top of that, what Lan Kuer did only made things worse. To ease the burden on his family, Gu Lin had no choice but to drop out of school and enter the workforce early to repay the debts. When my parents told me about this, they were still sighing in disbelief, never imagining that the once proud prodigy would end up in such a state. At the same time, they felt relieved that I had come to my senses early and didn't continue to entangle myself with Gu Lin. Life at H University was pleasant, except for the occasional text messages from Gu Lin that annoyed me. Gu Lin somehow got my phone number and kept sending me caring messages, asking how my college life was going and updating me on his own situation. Even though I almost never replied to his messages, he persisted in sending them tirelessly. I find it a bit ridiculous. In my past life, I shamelessly clung to him, and he hated me to the bone. In this life, I don't want to have anything to do with him, yet he sticks to me like a stubborn plaster. The last time Gu Lin contacted me was on my birthday. He spoke on the other end of the phone, both excited and cautious. Qian, happy birthday to you. Yeah. Thanks. I bought the little sweet pastries you love from our hometown and a small gift, and sent them to you. I hope you like them. I looked at the spicy duck neck my roommate handed me and said helplessly, Gu Lin, do you know I've never liked sweets? I don't like that pastry from our hometown at all. Back then, I only pretended to like it because you did, buying it to share with you. Have you never noticed that every time you eat? I never do. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone before a voice finally came through again. I'm sorry, Cece. After a long pause, he spoke again. Cece. I recently made some money from investments and will soon be able to pay off the family's debts. Do you have time for me to visit you at H University? Congratulations. I have things to do. So I'll hang up now. I didn't respond to Gu Lin's words and ended the call. When the package Gu Lin sent arrived, I transferred the money back to him. Gu Lin didn't accept it, and from then on, he never contacted me again. 4 years of college life passed in the blink of an eye. During these 4 years, I never saw Gu Lin again. I only heard bits of news about him from my parents when I returned home during winter and summer breaks. Gu Lin made a considerable amount of money through investments and paid off his family's debts. Lan Kuer somehow found out that Gu Lin had come into money and sought him out again. To everyone's astonishment, Gu Lin actually got back together with her. This time, just as everyone had expected, Lan Kuer soon swindled a sum of money and disappeared again. Aunt Gu was furious, hitting and scolding Gu Lin at home. This time, Gu Lin was surprisingly calm, as if he had foreseen that Lan Kuer would disappear. I treated all of this as gossip to spice up my dull life, not taking it seriously at all. These 4 years of a new life and new friends gradually made me forget the painful memories of my past life. As if it were all just a dream, 2 more years passed, and I graduated with a master's degree, preparing to go abroad for a PhD. Unexpectedly, I received news that Gu Lin had been thrown into prison. It turned out that Gu Lin initially made money through stock investments. After tasting the sweetness, he began using credit cards to continue trading stocks. But unexpectedly, the stock market plummeted, and he lost everything. To cover the credit card debt, he started borrowing from loan sharks. Eventually, he became a member of a loan sharking gang and joined their operations. They not only engaged in violent lending but also committed fraud. With Gu Lin serving as their bait, they packaged Gu Lin as a young and promising rich second-generation heir to carry out online romance scams. When they encountered wealthy targets, they would fleece them for a large sum. When they encountered those without money, they would take intimate photos of the women and threaten them into working for them. Originally, Lu Kua could have started a new life with the money she swindled from Gu Lin. However, somehow she got word of Gu Lin's rise to success and came back to find him. It was because of Blue Kur that Gu Lin lost a leg. It was also because of her that he had no chance to study and ended up on the path of crime. Deep down, Gu Lin hated Blue Kur so much that his teeth itched. But on the surface, he pretended to be hopelessly in love with her, spinning her around until she was completely disoriented. When the time was right, Gu Lin tricked Lan Kuo into traveling abroad with him and sold her to Southeast Asia. However, he publicly claimed that Lan Kuo had deceived him once again and fled with the money. One wrong step leads to another. The young entrepreneur who was once honored in his past life has now become a criminal in this one. I felt a twinge of regret. In fact, in his past life, Gu Lin had also made a fortune through stock trading during his college years. At that time, Gu Lin wanted to continue investing more, but I stubbornly stopped him. At first, he kept cursing me for being ignorant, claiming I had blocked his path to wealth. It wasn't until the stock market crash came that he fell silent. That money eventually became the foundation for Gu Lin's entrepreneurial venture in his past life. Looking back on all of this now, it feels like a lifetime ago. On the day I went abroad, Gu Lin was formally sentenced. Kidnapping and fraud. Multiple crimes punished together. Life imprisonment. Gu Lin, in the prime of his youth, will spend the rest of his life in prison. As for Lan Kuo, when she was rescued from the overseas telecom fraud headquarters, she had already become a madwoman. Her face was disfigured, and her body was covered with horrific scars, clearly showing that she had suffered inhuman abuse. Reincarnation gave Lan Kuo another chance, but it didn't change her intelligence. If she hadn't been greedy for the wealthy life that Gu Lin might bring her, she wouldn't have ended up like this. Even after being reborn, the foolish and selfish Lan Kuo was once again killed by her own greed. It's easy to imagine that after I died in my past life, she didn't become a perfect couple with Gu Lin. Nor did she enjoy the wealth and luxury she had envisioned, which is why she became so obsessed after reincarnation. I took a deep breath, let go of everything here, and boarded a flight abroad. At this moment, everything from the past life truly vanished like smoke. I smiled and said to myself, here I come. New life. End of the main text. Afterward, Gu Lin had a dream. In the dream, he and Lan Kuo failed to elope. Zhang Qian found him ahead of time and brought him back home. Because of his broken promise, Lan Kuo also broke up with him. In the dream, Gu Lin, heartbroken and devastated, couldn't bear the blow and became despondent. He smoked, drank, skipped classes, and hung out in bars. It was Zhang Qian who brought him back time and again, helped him with his studies, and covered for him. Yet he remained ungrateful, cursing Zhang Qian over and over again. Finally, he couldn't withstand Zhang Qian's persistent coaxing and began to study seriously. The time lost wasn't too long. After a period of effort, his grades returned to their previous level, and he naturally earned a spot to be recommended for admission to P University. Clearly, all of this was thanks to Zhang Qian. Yet the Gu Lin in the dream looked down on and mocked Zhang Qian for not achieving as much as he did. Gu Lin wanted to rush into the dream and beat up the version of himself in it, to knock some sense into him, but it was all in vain. It was just a dream. He could only watch, like a bystander, as another Gu Lin, identical to himself, lived out his entire life. Time in the dream flew by rapidly. Gu Lin watched as that version of himself, full of ambition, graduated from P University and, with Zhang Qian's company, started a business. The two of them once squeezed together in a rented basement room, eating instant noodles, and also stood on street corners selling products on cold winter nights. No matter how hard it was, no matter how many times he failed, Zhang Qian was always by his side. Just when he was about to give up in despair for the last time, he succeeded. He became the youngest young entrepreneur in the city, married Zhang Qian, and they had a child together. For a time, he was immensely proud. Just as Gu Lin thought that the him in the dream would continue to be happy forever, he encountered Lan Kuo again during a business social engagement. For the him in the dream, Lan Kuo was the unattainable white moonlight of his youth. Now that he was wealthy and powerful, of course he wanted to make up for this regret. As for Lan Kuo, she wasn't exactly desperate to find someone and quickly settle down for a better life. The two of them thus got together with an explosive, fiery passion. After a while, Lan Kua no longer wanted to maintain this secret relationship with him and began constantly whispering in his ear. She told him that it was all because of Zhang Qian that the two of them had to break up back then. And it was also because of Zhang Qian that she had suffered so much over the years. Gu Lin shouted at him in his dream, telling him not to believe Lan Kua, that she was a bad woman. But it was useless. He simply couldn't hear him. Under Lan Kua's daily confessions, he began to waver. He started to believe that his success was entirely his own doing and had nothing to do with Zhang Qian. On the contrary, it was because of Zhang Qian that he and Lan Kua had been misunderstood for so many years. He started arguing with Zhang Qian and demanded a divorce. Zhang Qian refused to agree, unwilling to let her child be born without a father. So when he saw Zhang Qian fall down the stairs, enraged by Lan Kua, he did not call for help but turned and walked away. Gu Lin cursed this version of himself in the dream, wanting to save Zhang Qian. But it was useless, could not touch or reach anything. Watching the blood beneath Zhang Qian spread more and more as she closed her eyes, Gu Lin finally couldn't hold back and burst into tears. The dream continues, never stopping. In the dream, he never expected Zhang Qian to die. He thought that as long as the child was gone, he could divorce Zhang Qian and naturally be with Lan Kua. He never expected Zhang Qian to actually die. But it didn't matter, death was even better. No one would be controlling him anymore. He thought that with Zhang Qian gone, he could live a blissful life with Lan Kua, enjoying each other's company day and night. Unexpectedly, most of the company's affairs were handled by Zhang Qian. Without her, he had to deal with everything himself. He simply had no time to go out and have fun with Lan Kua. A mountain of company matters left him overwhelmed and frantic. Sometimes he wanted Lan Kua to help him, but she was useless at everything, only good at spending money. It would have been better if she didn't help at all, because whenever she did, she only created more problems. Slowly, he began to miss Zhang Qian and gradually grew tired of Lan Kua. Perhaps sensing his attitude, Lan Kua also noticed his change and started to plan an escape route for herself. Just as he was about to dump Lan Kua, he discovered that she had stolen his company's unreleased new technology, sold it to a rival company, and fled with the money. Due to the premature leak of the technical data, he was held accountable by various affiliated companies. To compensate them, he had no choice but to sell his company at a low price. Everything he fought for was gone, and he was left with nothing once again. As a bell rang, Gu Lin's dream came to an end. He touched the corner of his eye, where a trace of a tear stain remained. He felt a moment of daze. This dream was too real. So real that he almost forgot he was now nothing more than a prisoner. He has nothing to do with any big entrepreneurs. He got up and tidied up absent-mindedly, starting his prison life in a daze. Returning to the cell at night, a familiar voice came from the TV. "Hello everyone, my name is Zhang Shi, and I graduated from H University." Gu Lin, who had been numb all day, suddenly perked up and looked at the TV. A familiar figure appeared on the screen, a girl with short hair and a sweet smile. Who else could it be but Zhang Qian? In an instant, dreams and reality overlapped. Gu Lin shouted at the TV, "It's her. She's my wife. She's my wife. She's your wife. What's wrong with you? She is the new beautiful translator at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, fluent in 8 languages. How could she possibly be the wife of a fraudster like you? A toad lusting after a swan's flesh. Get lost. Get lost. Don't bother everyone watching TV." A cellmate shoved Gu Lin aside, but Gu Lin rushed forward again, hugging the TV and shouting, "She really is my wife. We're about to have a child. By the way, what should we name the baby?" Gu Lin's shouting attracted the prison guards. Thinking Gu Lin had gone mad, the guards hastily called for a doctor, gave him a sedative injection, and took him away. Until the last moment before losing consciousness, Gu Lin kept shouting, "Give me back my wife. She is my wife. Let me go. I want my wife. Let me go." Gu Lin had completely lost his mind, unable to distinguish reality from dreams. In his dreams, he was confident and had a beautiful wife. In reality, he was just a prisoner, Gu Lin, who was originally destined to spend the rest of his life in prison, now had to spend the rest of his life in a mental hospital. Zhang Qian knew nothing about this. As she stepped onto the international stage, began to shine in her beloved career, and lived a happy life to the end. End of the full text.